everyone, this is Abigail with Pinkstone Threads, and today I'm going to be reviewing Lion Brand Yarn's TruBoo, which is 100% rayon from bamboo. It is so soft to the touch, and that's why I've really wanted to try it out for quite some time now. And I finally went ahead and said, all right, let's give it a go. So I have made several projects with this yarn so far, and I'll show those to you a little bit later, but I just wanted to go over some of the qualities of the yarn. So when you pick it up, it is so soft. I think that's one of the real attractions of this yarn, and I don't know if you can tell, but there is just a slight halo. So you might want to be a bit careful with that. I think you can see it a bit more here. So I would not use it for any garment that was going to be worn frequently, or any sort of blanket or pillow that might get a lot of things rubbing up against it, because that will halo quite a bit from what I can see from this specific skein. So I will be knitting and crocheting with this today, and I have actually started on my knitting swatch here, and it is such a lovely feel to it. This is just garter stitch, really soft, really wonderful. It kind of reminds me of how I think that Frodo's armor, his armor shirt would feel, just so soft. It just drapes wonderfully and feels so soft and flexible. So I think the feel of it is really great, but there are certain things that aren't so great about it. And I just think it's good for you guys to know this before you start in with a project. I would definitely recommend knitting or crocheting a swatch, just so you can see the different qualities of the fabric you're going to get, and so you can kind of work through the difficulties. I would say that there is definitely a learning curve to this yarn. It splits pretty easily. I think you can see a couple times I have one split here, and I really had to kind of go really slowly, make sure I was watching my project the whole time, and so I think that's why this yarn isn't quite for everyone. So I think you can see just about every mistake. You have to be a very meticulous, slow, perfectionist knitter to really get a good product from this. And I just, I would zone out for a second and I would split my yarn, and I'm not the kind of knitter that really wants to rip back every time I make a mistake. And with some of the other projects I've done, I was definitely having some trouble accidentally twisting a stitch. As you can see here, there's more kind of areas that I split the yarn. So it's just a project that you have to go really slowly on. You're gonna want very specific needles. I'm using bamboo needles here, and I do prefer that just because I think this is such a slippery yarn that you do need some grip. So some sort of wood or bamboo would probably be better than metal or plastic, or even resin. But yeah, it's a tricky yarn to work with, so I definitely recommend knitting a swatch. And I'll just go ahead and knit a row for you guys so you can see kind of how the yarn behaves or doesn't behave when it's knitting up. So you have to be very careful when inserting your needle, and just go really quite slowly, which is not ideal if you are a knitter who likes to watch TV or, be focusing on something else. This is one where you really have to take your time and focus on the knitting so you don't accidentally split the yarn. But I feel like I've kind of gotten the hang of it now. more than I did before, so I think it's going a bit smoother now. So I think, you know, once you get past that learning curve, it really can be just a wonderful yarn. I would love to do, you know, maybe a shirt with this, a knitted shirt, but probably not a high traffic garment. So it is funny, it kind of feels, after a while of knitting with this, the yarn kind of feels oily to the touch. I don't know if that's just me or if anyone else has experienced that. Definitely comment below your experience working with this yarn if you've worked with it before. But yeah, after a while, I don't know if it's my fingers kind of going a little bit numb or something, but it definitely does feel kind of weird and oily to the touch, but still really soft. Alright, and now I'm going to crochet a swatch. So I'm just using a 4mm crochet hook. I don't have a 4mm bamboo crochet hook, but I would probably recommend using that, as I've crocheted a little bit with this before and it can be very slippery. So definitely would recommend probably bamboo or wood, just something with a bit more grip since it is such a slippery yarn. So I'll just do a little swatch for you guys today. And I had crocheted a bit with this before, and one of the issues that I did notice is that it can be difficult to keep an even tension, just because the yarn is so slick that sometimes I was really doing quite tight of a loop or too loose of a loop. And you can definitely see that in the final product of, it's definitely not a forgiving yarn, so I would be just aware of that. And I'll go ahead and speed through this part. So as you can see here, I did split my yarn. And I barely even noticed. So as you can see, all of those threads have kind of just split apart here. So I'm gonna have to go back to wherever I made the mistake here. And I think I just kind of lost grip or lost tension, and oh boy. So on this row, I'm noticing kind of some varying tension in the single crochet stitches. And I think that's partly because it's really hard to keep a good grip on your yarn, just because with your left hand, just because it is so slick. So I think that's one thing that maybe I've seen some different finger grips, some different things that you can use to kind of keep a better hold on your yarn, but that is one thing to watch out for too. Just noticing, yeah, that some of these single crochet stitches, although they do look pretty uniform, inserting my hook into them, I am noticing some varying degrees of tightness. Alright, and here I have my final swatch here. I did try out some different stitches. We have single crochet, double crochet, and treble crochet. The single and double were pretty easy once I kind of got into the hang of things. I will say treble crochet was a bit tricky just because I felt like the end of my hook here kept catching the yarn, and so there were a couple times when I did have to undo my work and go back. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the fabric that Crochet does create with this TruBoo yarn. It would be lovely to make, again, a shirt out of this. a nice summery or, you know, a spring garment especially. And so just comparing my two swatches here, overall I'm pretty happy with them, although it's definitely not a forgiving yarn. You can't see my mistakes really in the crochet, so crochet might be a bit more forgiving, but my knit mistakes I think are pretty apparent, especially in garter stitch. So I'll show you some finished products I do have, or projects I do have with these yarns. So here I did a garter stitch hat, a little baby hat, and then I just added an I-cord for the stem, and did a little crochet curly hue. So it's a cute little pumpkin hat, just adorable for babies. But I will say I did have a lot of challenges with this. Just like with my swatch, I felt like just every single mistake would show through. So I think you can see that I twisted a stitch here. Thankfully it doesn't show on the other side, but basically I ended up with one pretty rough side and that'll be just the inside of the hat here. So here you can see that I kind of split the yarn with my needle, and it's a tricky yarn to work with, and especially in knitting it can be so difficult to go back and pick up those stitches if you were to undo it. I think that picking up the stitches would really cause even more mistakes than just leaving the mistakes in your project, just because, you know, with this needle size maybe it's just so easy to split your yarn. And then for a second project that kind of goes with that one, I do have this adorable little toddler overalls featuring my pumpkin stitch. And if you're interested in this, I do have a tutorial on my YouTube, so you can find that linked below. And I also made a blanket with this stitch. Overall, been really enthusiastic about it, so I wanted to go ahead and feature it in kind of like a pumpkin patch little overall set. So I have the stitch here at the bottom, and I haven't woven in my ends yet. I'm kind of lazy about that. But I did weave them in up here, and I do notice some issues. So I don't know if you can tell, there are a couple spots where I wove in my ends and the yarn's just popping through there. I do think that that's just because the yarn is so slippery, so you'll want to really carefully weave in your ends there. I might have to do a little bit of a fix later on, but I think it is going to be challenging to get, you know, a really good weave in with this slippery of a yarn. But overall, pretty happy with it. It's got a little bit of stretch to it, but not too much. And I am really happy with this project. I think this yarn is wonderful for baby products, just because of how soft it is. But again, I think there are some areas where you can see kind of little bit of a mistake, or just an area where, you know, the yarn kind of caught on my needle. Every single thing is very apparent in this, in the fabric with this yarn. I think because it has kind of a sheen to it, and maybe a little bit of the halo, it just makes it quite apparent if you do make mistakes. But overall, very happy with it. I think there are things that, you know, I wish hadn't happened, but, you know, you can kind of poke them into the project, and hopefully when it's being worn, it won't be terribly noticeable. But overall, I do really enjoy this yarn. I would definitely recommend trying it out. Definitely swatch it first, get used to it. If you like slicker yarns, if you've worked with silk before, or if you've worked with rayon blends, you might find this a bit easier to work with. But just because I haven't really worked with this kind of yarn before, I did find it pretty challenging. It is machine washable, machine wash cold, and then you'll just lay flat to dry, so that can be nice for garments as well. Please let me know if you've tried out this yarn, your experience with it, what you've made with it. I have a bit of it left, so I'm interested in making some more projects with it. And thank you so much for watching.